The sea was cold. The wind was strong. But the Chinese men on the ship did not stop. They did not turn back. They were tired, but they were full of hope. They looked at the land ahead. It was America. A new place, a new life. The year was 1849. The city was San Francisco. People called it Gold Mountain. They said there was gold in the ground. They said it was easy to find. They said you could become rich. So the Chinese men left their homes. They said goodbye to their families. They traveled across the ocean. They believed in the dream. When they arrived, the city was loud. There were horses and wagons in the streets. People shouted. The streets were dirty and full of mud. The Chinese men were quiet. They looked around. Everything was new. The buildings, the clothes, the faces. It was not like home. They did not speak English. They did not know the laws. They did not understand the people, but they were ready to work. At first, they searched for gold. They used their hands. They worked hard. But the best land was already taken. Other men had already found the easy gold. So the Chinese workers found other jobs. They washed clothes. They cooked food. They helped build railroads. They worked many hours. They worked faster. They worked for less money. Many people were happy to hire them, but some people were not happy. Some Americans became angry. They said, "These Chinese men are taking our jobs." One day, a group of Chinese miners found a little gold. They smiled. They were happy. They had worked for weeks. Now they had a small reward. But soon, some American miners came. One American man said, "That gold is ours." The Chinese miners said no. They tried to explain. "We worked here." But the American man pulled out a gun. He fired. The gold fell to the ground. No one picked it up. The fight had started. After that, more problems came. People attacked Chinese homes. Some houses were burned. Some people were hurt. Some even died. The police did not help. No one was punished. Then, in 1882, a new law was made. It was called the Chinese Exclusion Act. This law said that Chinese workers could not come to America anymore. It was the first time the U.S. stopped a whole group of people from entering the country. Posters were put on walls. They said, "The Chinese must go." Angry groups came. They pulled Chinese men from their homes. They set fire to Chinese businesses. They pushed people out of towns. Many Chinese people ran to small areas called Chinatowns. These were places where they could feel safe. They lived close together. They helped each other. Life was still hard, but they tried to stay strong. They wrote letters to their families in China. They said, "Do not come. This is not the land of gold. It is the land of pain." But still, many Chinese workers stayed. They had no home to go back to. They had no money to leave. So they stayed and continued to work. They helped build the railroads. They worked in factories. They cooked in restaurants. They cleaned homes. They took care of children. They helped grow America. But America did not welcome them. They were part of the country, but they were not treated like others. They were strong. They were brave. They kept going. Even when life was unfair, they did not give up. Their story was not written in books. Their names were not in the news. But they were important. They helped build a nation. This was the beginning of the story between China and America. It did not start with peace. It did not start with kindness. It started with hard work, pain, and silence. The first meetings were not friendly. The first wounds were deep. But the Chinese people did not disappear. They stayed. They survived. They waited for a better day. And that is how history began. The year was 1950. The place was Korea. It was cold. Snow was falling. The land was hard like stone. A young American soldier lay on the ground. He held his gun. He was scared. He could hear footsteps. Someone was coming. The war in Korea had started. The United States helped South Korea. China helped North Korea. The two big countries were not fighting directly, but their soldiers were shooting. Their people were dying. It was a real war, even without the word war. The U.S. Army came first. They pushed the North Koreans back, close to the border with China. It looked like the U.S. would win. But then something changed. China sent soldiers. They were called volunteers, but they came in big numbers. They wore thick jackets. They carried guns. They walked through the snowy mountains, cold and tired, but they did not stop. The American soldiers were surprised. They were not ready. The Chinese soldiers attacked again and again in waves. First one group, then another, then more. It felt like they never ended. The Americans tried to fight back, but they had to run. They moved back, town by town. The goal was no longer to win. It was just to stay alive. In the end, no one won the Korean War. The fighting stopped, but the country was still divided. There was no peace. Only a line in the middle called the 38th parallel. One side became South Korea. The other side became North Korea. China and the United States were now enemies in a long, cold war. Years later, it happened again. This time, it was Vietnam. The jungle was hot and full of danger. The air smelled like smoke and rain. American helicopters flew over the trees. U.S. soldiers walked slowly through the forest. They watched every step. They did not know where the enemy was hiding. Vietnam was a different kind of war. There were no clear front lines. The enemy moved like shadows. They came out, attacked, and disappeared. The U.S. helped South Vietnam. China and the Soviet Union helped the North. It was another fight between powers, but not face to face. Then came another problem: Taiwan. In 1949, China's civil war ended. Mao Zedong became the leader of Communist China. The old government, the nationalists, ran away to Taiwan. They made a new government there. But China said Taiwan still belonged to them. They wanted it back. At first, the United States did nothing. But when the Korean War began, America changed its mind. They did not want another country to fall to communism. The U.S. sent warships to the Taiwan Strait. It was a warning to China: do not attack. For many years, the tension stayed. In 1954 and again in 1958, China fired missiles at islands near Taiwan. It was loud. It was scary. People thought a war might start. The U.S. sent more ships and more planes. But in the end, China stopped. There was no war, just silence. But the fear stayed. Then, something big happened. It was 1972. An American airplane flew over the sky of Beijing. Inside the plane sat U.S. President Richard Nixon. He was quiet. He was serious. He knew this was a moment of history. When the plane landed, Nixon stepped out. It was cold. He saw the Chinese leaders. And then, he saw Mao Zedong. The two men looked at each other. They had once been enemies. They had never met before. Nixon reached out his hand. Mao looked at him. Then he smiled. He shook Nixon's hand. That handshake changed the world. For over 20 years, the United States and China had not talked. Now, they were starting a new chapter. Nixon visited the Great Wall. He watched Chinese opera. He spoke with Premier Zhou Enlai. He listened, he learned. It was not a friendship, not yet, but it was the beginning of something new. The two countries agreed to open trade. They agreed to talk more. They began to understand each other, step by step. China and the United States had fought. They had feared each other, but now they were learning to speak. The Cold War had many dangers, but sometimes a small handshake can open a big door. At night, the city of Shanghai is full of lights. Tall buildings shine like stars. Cars move quickly through the streets. People walk fast. The city never sleeps. It looks modern. It looks rich. It looks powerful. Many years ago, China was different. Most people worked on farms. The country was poor. The cities were small. But now, everything has changed. China has grown fast. It has become one of the strongest economies in the world. Far across the ocean, in the United States, people started to notice. For many years, America was the leader of the world economy. It had big companies. It had strong banks. It had the best technology. But now, China is rising quickly. At first, China made things for the world. It made clothes, toys, and electronics. It was cheaper to make things in China, so many American companies sent their factories there. This helped businesses make more money. Prices stayed low. Everyone seemed happy. But after some time, China wanted more. It did not want to only make products. It wanted to create its own companies. It wanted to lead. New Chinese companies appeared. Names like Huawei, Alibaba, and TikTok became popular. These were no longer just factories. They were smart businesses. They started to compete with big American brands. China built more and more. Fast trains moved through the countryside. Cities grew overnight. The country was not just copying the world anymore. It was starting to shape the future. The United States became worried. The U.S. said China was not playing fair. It said the Chinese government helped companies too much. It said Chinese companies used secret tricks. So America started to fight back. It added taxes, called tariffs, to Chinese goods. It banned Huawei. It blocked some Chinese apps. The trade war had started. Then, something new happened. The fight moved to a different place, a place no one could see. The internet. There were no tanks or bombs. There were computers, hackers, codes, data. It was a silent war. Some American officials said China was using technology to spy. They said Chinese companies were stealing information. China said it was not true. But both sides started to block each other's apps and websites. The fight was about who controls information, about who controls the future. One of the biggest battles was about microchips. These are small parts that power computers and phones. The U.S. made the best microchips. China needed them. But now, China wants to make its own. It started building new factories. It spent billions of dollars. It trained new engineers. The race for technology had begun. While this happened, the South China Sea became another place of conflict. This sea is important. It has oil and gas under the water. It has ships that carry money and goods for many countries. China said the sea belonged to them. They built small islands. Then they built runways and military bases on them. The United States said no. The sea should be open to everyone. So, the U.S. sent warships to the area. Chinese ships were already there. Sometimes the two sides came very close. One wrong move could start a war. Other countries joined the fight. Vietnam, the Philippines, and Malaysia also said parts of the sea belonged to them. The sea became crowded, dangerous. Everyone waited. No one wanted to shoot first. At the same time, China started building in other parts of the world. in Africa, in Asia, in South America. China helped build roads, railways, ports, and schools. This plan was called the Belt and Road Initiative. China gave money to countries to help them grow, but some people were worried. What if those countries could not pay the money back? Would China take control? The United States answered with its own deals. It gave money. It made promises. It said, "Work with us, and we will protect your freedom." Now, the fight was not just about money, it was about ideas. Who should lead the world? Who should make the rules? Then came a close call. In 2001, a U.S. spy plane flew near China. A Chinese fighter jet flew too close and hit the American plane. The U.S. plane had to land in China. The crew was held. The world was scared. Would this start a war? But after some time, the U.S. crew was sent home. War was avoided again. Now we are living in a time of questions. Two powerful countries, one world. Will they share it, or will they fight for it? No one knows. But everyone is watching, and the next chapter is still being written. This is the end of our story about the long and complicated relationship between the United States and China. It began with a dream. Chinese workers came to America in 1849 full of hope. They wanted gold, but found pain. They were not welcomed. They worked hard, helped build the country, but were treated unfairly. They stayed strong and survived. Years later, the two nations met again, this time in war. In Korea and Vietnam, they stood on opposite sides. They did not speak. They did not trust each other. But one day, in 1972, President Nixon visited China. He shook hands with Mao Zedong. That moment opened a new door. They began to talk. They began to trade. Then came a new kind of war. No bombs, no guns, but trade wars, technology fights, and silent tension in the sea and online. Today, the two countries still watch each other. They still compete. But they also depend on each other. So what can we learn? Even when people are different, even when they disagree, they can still learn to listen and work together. Fear and anger grow when we stop talking, but peace grows when we start to understand. In your own life, you may meet people who are different. Don't fight first. Try to understand. Listen. Speak kindly. This can change everything. Congratulations! You have just improved your English listening and reading skills by finishing this full story. You followed history, felt the emotions, and learned powerful lessons, all in English. That is amazing. Now a small question for you. What is more important in solving big problems? A. Talking and listening. B. Being stronger than others. Comment below with your answer, A or B. Please subscribe to our channel if you found this story helpful. It gives us the power to keep making great free content just for you. If you'd like to support us, please consider donating. Creating high-quality stories takes time and energy, and we do it for free to help you learn English. Thank you from the heart. Keep learning, keep listening, keep growing.